there, welcome back to another video. This time around, it is my review of the 1992 romantic drama film, Prelude to a Kiss. Now, I gotta be honest, I had never even heard of this movie until I was requested to check this out. Um, this is definitely not the kind of movie, though, that I would probably normally seek out, though. But when I found out that it was a body swap film, though, then I was like, okay, all right, that's up my alley. Because I do like body swap movies. I think it's an interesting subgenre, and I really wanted to love this, but this is just pretty mediocre. Now, before I get around to sharing more of my thoughts on the film, though, I want to give a special shout out to Ryan for requesting this review. And if there is another film, TV show, or topic that you would like to see me discuss in the future, feel free to donate to either my PayPal, my Patreon, or my Cash App. The links to all three are in the video description down below, and I will try to get to your requests as soon as I possibly can. Now, Prelude to a Kiss is a film directed by Norman René. And Norman René, before this movie, was known more as a guy who directed stage plays. I think looking at his IMDb, he did direct some other stuff prior to Prelude to a Kiss. In fact, he directed a film called Longtime Companion in 1989 that did get some critical acclaim. But he's more known for his stage work. And he actually, I believe, was the director of the stage play that this film was based on, Prelude to a Kiss. And not really being that familiar with this filmmaker and his filmography, I was really impressed by his direction. I thought this was a slick, stylish, and really great looking film. There were numerous different shots in this where I was like, okay, that camera angle was really uh, interesting, or the framing was done in a unique way, and the camera is not static. There are some points where the camera definitely stands still for the moments when it needs to, because it's not trying to be too much of a distraction. But when it comes to scenes that are trying to be more whimsical, trying to be more uh, uh, fantastical, or create a certain sense of wonder or beauty, or have a sort of ethereal feel to them, the direction really accomplishes that well. And I feel the director did a great job getting some very strong performances out of his cast as well. And all in all, I thought the direction by Norman René was wonderful. I genuinely feel he did a great job directing this. The film is written by Craig Lucas, who also wrote the stage play. And to me, this is a concept and a premise for a story that is fairly original. It has a bit of an old-fashioned flair to it in terms of the dialogue-heavy scenes, and how a lot of it is, in a lot of ways, a throwback to some of the older films that you would have seen made in the 30s and 40s. And I think there is something sweet and charming when it comes to that approach. And I do feel there is a genuine heart behind this script and this story. And I think the romance between Peter and Rita is actually pretty effective. I definitely feel that there is some genuine, fire, and I feel that there's a pretty good connection between the two that is built early on in the film, in the story, and throughout the movie. And I do think there are some good life lessons, and there's some good other messaging in the script that I think can definitely resonate. But at the end of the day, I feel this script is honestly a bit disappointing because I feel that for a body swap film, for instance, it just feels like the body swap aspect is almost an afterthought. It's like it's there because it was in the play and it was something that was different and made the story stand out, but it doesn't really seem like that is really where a lot of the creativity is focused on when it comes to the script or when it comes to the dialogue. And while there are some good moments here and there, I just feel that that was, in my opinion, the point when this film really could have become something really unique and really interesting and fun. And it just doesn't really do as much with that as I would have liked. And it also takes way too long to get to that point. That is the selling point of this movie. And it doesn't happen until like 35 minutes into the movie. And that's way too long for a film that's only an hour and 40 something minutes to have the body swap happen. And it's also one of those stories where there's not really a lot of lore behind any of this. There's not really any mythology. There's not really any explanation for why the swap happened. It's just this very, in all honesty, lame explanation that's just like, if you believe hard enough and you wish hard enough, it can happen. And I'm like, that is really lazy writing. And when the swap does happen between Rita and this old man, you don't really see a lot of Rita and the old man's body for a good chunk of the movie. It just disappears. You see more of the old man, Julius, and Rita's body, and a lot of the stuff with the old man and Rita's body is just awkward and corny. The dialogue, the attempts at comedy, uh, I'll give the script this, it does a good job making you believe that it's the same guy in her body, with the same mannerisms, eating food the same way, licking her fingers the same way, having different sort of dialect that ties into the kind of way the old man talked. But I think the fact that you don't really know a whole lot about the old man prior to the swap, that's a problem. He's just some random guy who shows up at the wedding for Peter and Rita. I mean, the script did a really good job making you buy that Peter and Rita were madly in love with one another, and they were a good fit, and they genuinely were attracted to each other, and the whole marriage, even though it was kind of rushed, it still made sense. But the old guy, Julius, you know nothing about him. If you're going to take a while to get to the body swap stuff, well, then let us know more about the other person in the swap. Like, why wait on that until later on? It just felt like it was just a very misguided approach to the story and to the script. And then when the swap does happen, you have the honeymoon in Jamaica, and it's just awkward and in not necessarily a funny way or a particularly enjoyable way. But I will admit, Peter's increasing desperation, him genuinely starting to lose it with the realization that his wife's body could very well be inhabited by some other guy. This weird old man he saw at his wedding is handled very well. His gradual descent into madness and desperation, him having these weird, awkward conversations with his coworkers, and then eventually him running into Julius, who is Rita, at a bar, at the same bar that I think Rita worked at. And what follows after that is actually a really sweet a series of sequences involving Peter and Julius. You get to know more about Julius's family, and you find out that he doesn't have long to live. And there is a really great scene between Peter and Julius, who is also Rita at this particular point in time, where Peter and Julius are playing the Scrabble, and Julius talks about life. And the way that the dialogue is written is incredible. And that, in my opinion, is one of the best parts of the movie, is moments like that. Because it felt very real and very genuine. And that's where I think the script definitely lived up to its full potential when it comes to moments like that. But when it comes to like, oh, the swap and the differences between men and women and all, it barely touched upon any of that. Whether for dramatic or for comedic effect. And at this point in time, Rita has gone off somewhere. She's already broken up with Peter. Peter's trying to find her, trying to get back with her because he's trying to find a way to get Rita back in her body. Because he's running out of time. Because Sydney is the guy who plays this character, Julius. Julius doesn't have long to live, so it's the clock is ticking, and he finally manages to get a hold of Rita's mom, and they set up a plan to meet up with Rita, and they're gonna try to make the swap happen. And I do like the fact that they try to do it by force initially, but it doesn't work, and then it ultimately does work when Rita and Julius remember what they were thinking about and remember the feelings that they were feeling when the swap happened, and they go back to that moment when they wanted to be one another and they wanted it real bad, and then they swap back. And there's some more funny anecdotes from Julius before he goes, but there's some really awkward anecdotes as well that just come across in a very forced fashion, or just come across the wrong way. It makes this guy come across like not really the most amicable personality, or really not the nicest guy. And I think that's the point, but it doesn't really work that well. And it doesn't help either that there's this very forced message about having kids. And that was something that was even present when Julius was in Rita's body. He was talking about, let's have a baby and so on and so forth. And that was one of the many things that made Peter suspicious and start to really think that his wife is no longer his wife and it's somebody else, because she didn't want to have kids. And other things is, she's a bartender, but she doesn't know how to make a Long Island iced tea, and so on and so forth. And this whole kids thing, I think it's trying to come across as sincere and heartfelt. And to me, it comes across like a bit of almost like propaganda, almost like, hey, you women who don't want to have kids, you need to have kids because this is what you're missing out on. And I've always felt that that was wrong in anything I've seen that message in, because to me, that's not something that you should force upon somebody. If they don't want it and they're not ready, then there entitled to that. And because it's a woman's body, it's her choice. She can make whatever decision she wants to make with her body. And some women, they're just not ready for it, or they don't really want that. And that's perfectly acceptable to me. And I don't think they should be shamed or guilted into having kids. I think that's messed up. And that's kind of a message that this film is clearly trying to convey, and it comes across just as forced and awkward as it sounds. But all of that being said, I do like the sincerity of the script's better messages. I do like the relationship between Rita and Peter. And I like the whole body swap angle because I do find that to be a fun subgenre, and there's a lot to work with. But this just doesn't really do that much with it, and almost seems like it's a Lifetime movie version that's just not really willing to cross any lines. And it really does feel like the body swap thing was not even really necessary. It was just more of a gimmick than anything else when it comes to the story, because of the fact that there's so little that's done with it. But there's some strong dialogue at points, and it does have some genuine moments that are heartfelt and tender and have some genuine soul behind them. But because of the reasons that I've discussed already, this is very much a so-so script to me personally. And it also suffers from something a lot of stage adaptations do, where the stage writer, the guy who wrote the stage play, he is reluctant to make that many changes for film. So you get something that might translate perfectly fine on stage, but doesn't translate nearly as well on film, because there needed to be some alterations and there needed to be some changes, and they weren't made. And so I think as a result, that's another reason why the script is just kind of just there for me. The cast, honestly, I think is great. Alec Baldwin, I thought he did a really good job as Peter. Uh, he was less believable playing kind of a hopeless hipster kind of guy early on, but I warmed up to him. And really, it's the scenes with him and Sydney Walker that really made me appreciate this performance quite a bit. Or the scenes when he's with Rita, but it's not Rita. And I read something on IMDb that he was Peter in the off Broadway version of this play, which I think it might have been an off Broadway play anyway, but I'm not entirely sure about that. And yeah, I think he did a good job playing this role. It was a difficult role. It was definitely something that's easy to handle the wrong way and make it come across as hammy, but I didn't really feel that way when it comes to Alec's performance. I felt his wardrobe was more awkward than his performance was, to be honest, especially the shirt he was wearing at the beginning of the movie. It looked like he was wearing a dirty shirt. But then you find out that it's just the style of shirt he was wearing. I guess there was a popular style in the 90s where guys wore dress shirts that looked like they were stained or they were dirty. I don't know why, And I hope that style does not come back. But Alec was pretty good in this, and Meg Ryan was even better, to be honest. Like, she was just a breath of fresh air, a burst of sunshine, just so vivacious and energetic. And it really did seem like she was having a good time with this role. And she had good chemistry with Alec, and I really enjoyed her in this. Honestly, I would say it's one of my favorite performances from her that I've seen uh, in a while, because I haven't really seen a lot of Meg Ryan films lately. It's not up with the other performances she's more well known for, or performances that I personally really enjoy, like Inner Space, but it's still pretty high up there. Like, I really enjoyed watching her in this. And her quirky personality she provided to Rita, and then also how she shifted when Julius was in her body. This is a really strong performance. And then you have Sydney Walker, who he was like 71 at the time, and I think he was the one who played the same character on the stage play, but I'm not 100% sure about that. But he hadn't really acted in a lot of films, and this was one of his first major roles. I think it was his first major role, and it didn't seem like it. This was a really good performance, especially when he's Rita in Julius's body. Like, he really did a good job acting like a guy who has, Rita's soul in inside of his body, and played it straight and played it with a certain approach that made it into not only a memorable performance, but a performance that had its own amount of charm. And the rest of the cast is fine too. Kathy Bates as Julius's mom, Ned Beatty is as Rita's dad, and Patty Duke as Rita's mom. Stanley Tucci has a small role as Taylor, this work friend of Peter's. So it definitely is a good cast. I know that initially there were some other cast members that were considered for the film. Mary Lou, like Mary Louise Parker, who was set to reprise her role from the original stage show, but Meg Ryan got it because she was a bigger star. And Alec Guinness was originally cast in the role of Sydney, but he dropped out, so he had to be replaced. But I'm really glad that they settled for the cast that they did, because I think they really did click. And another thing that really clicked for me was the cinematography by Stefan Sapsky. I probably butchered that. Uh, this was a spectacular looking film. The cinematography was gorgeous. There were some shots that really did wow me, and he's just a master of his craft anyway. I mean, this is the same cinematographer who worked with Tim Burton on Edward Scissorhands and Batman Returns. So the guy definitely has a very strong track record when it comes to doing cinematography, and this film is no exception. Like, it looks amazing, and I think the editing was fine. I don't think it was award winning or amazing by Stephen A. Rotter, but it wasn't rotten. And the music by Howard Shore, it's not what I would consider to be one of his more memorable scores, but I think it fit the tone of the film fine. It was decent enough. There were some moments where I felt like it was a little corny, but I didn't mind it. I definitely like some of the songs that they featured in the film more than the score. Like the song I Touch Myself by the Divinals, which is a great song. Someone Like You by Van Morrison. The cover of the song "Prelude to a Kiss" by Deborah Harry from the opening credits. "Every Time We Say Goodbye" by Annie Lennox. So yeah, I think it's got a pretty good soundtrack as well. But it's just one of those movies though where it's weird, but it's not as weird as it could be. It needed to be even weirder, even more offbeat, even more surreal, in my opinion. It's trying to be this weird, in a bad way, mix of serious melodrama and romance with like quirky fantasy elements, and it just doesn't really all come together in the end that well. But when it does, it has its own sense of magic, but it's rather fleeting. But because of that, it's at least an okay film to me. And I would say that it's definitely a little bit better than some people have made it out to be. But I wouldn't say that this is like a new favorite of mine or a gem by any means. But I would say if you like Meg Ryan, maybe you're also one of the few people who's still a fan of Alec Baldwin. Maybe give this a watch sometime. Maybe you want to see a romantic film that is something that is a little more unique when it comes to its plot, then maybe give this one a watch. You're not going to be able to stream it though, because it's not available on streaming, which I'm kind of curious as to why. Uh, Maybe it's because of the subject matter, but it's rather tame. It doesn't really do anything that controversial or cancelable with the subject matter. But yeah, I mean, I've seen better films, better high concept romance films, but I've also seen worse. But anyway, that's my thoughts on Prelude to a Kiss. And as always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you later. See ya.